All right, we are live. Glenn, if you wouldn't mind muting while I'm talking, we'll go back and forth. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. There's always technical difficulties getting these things off, dusting off the cobwebs with the new year. But we would certainly appreciate everybody joining us today. We'll be able to share this content with you later. But today we're really going to be talking about something that doesn't get enough airtime in ERP conversations. What actually happens after go live. I think that's why most of you folks are here today. So we're going to be going through what we have learned. Bear in mind, this is not a pitch deck on how great Nuage is. We really want to get into data-backed discussions based on a full year of our optimization work across live NetSuite environments in 2025. By way of introduction, I'm Louis Balla. I'll be moderating. We're the partners here, joined by my colleague, Glenn Saunders, our COO, who is live and lives in the trenches of system architecture and optimization strategy. I don't know why I said you're alive, but he is alive. He's not a Hey Gen clone. He's with us for real. And then Alex Stoika, who leads our customer success, sees the real world impact, the good and bad every single day. You guys want to give a quick intro and we'll dive right in?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm the customer success manager here at Nuage on the East Coast, and been here a few years, and really get to hear from all of our customers on a daily basis, kind of their pain points and how we've helped them overall with their optimization.
All right, sorry, looking for the mute button, unmute, I should say. But Glenn Saunders, COO here, have, over 20 years, 22 years experience working in ERP. Have a background in accounting, but have worked kind of across all industries over my career. And I head up our services organization. So the implementation side, post-implementation, optimization, custom solutions design, and pretty much everything NetSuite. I've been working in NetSuite since 2012. So not as long as some, but longer than a lot. And yeah, look forward to the conversation today as always.
All right, well, let's jump into the slides and set the tone. You all should be able to see this executive summary. The headline here is pretty uncomfortable. 70–80% of potential system value erodes post go live. Not because NetSuite fails, but because systems drift. Glenn, when you hear value erosion, what does that actually look like inside a live environment to you?
People aren't taking advantage of new features that come out, or, we've heard this when we go in to do an assessment for somebody who may be considering living in coming to NetSuite is, well, we've always done it that way. Not why are you doing that way? And a lot of times implementations focus on getting you live, getting the processes standardized, but really, how do you optimize those processes after go live? How do you find areas of automation? And that could be customization. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but how do you automate some of these processes? We just did one for someone who gets returns. We automated the creation upon item receipt of the credit memo. That was taking a full-time person almost 2 weeks out of their month. And I'm probably exaggerating a little, but we also had to backdate it. There were over 1,000, right, that they had just from December. So someone sitting there hitting the button every time instead of a simple automation that gives them a lot of return. And that's a simple example, but those are the types of things people aren't thinking about because they're so focused on the day-to-day. And I think that's where those types of things where we come in and we can assess and say, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about these types of things that can automate your processes and streamline things? And you also have this knowledge gap of what NetSuite is capable of and how to do things versus just what you can do by clicking the buttons and working within the system.
And Alex, can you share a little bit more on the customer side?
Yeah, so from the customer side, teams often don't realize their NetSuite value is quietly eroding until they face painful period and close, and then they're forced to notice it then. So a common theme that I hear is, hey, it worked well last year, so it should work well now. And that type of mindset, it kind of leads companies to overlook the gradual process drift. So after go live, if there's no clear owner to continuously tune the system, those small issues accumulate if they're unchecked like that. So those types of lack of ownership, they turn those minor inefficiencies into major headaches over time.
No, well said. And I think the takeaway as we dive deeper into the deck here is ROI doesn't stall. It decays unless someone's actively protecting it. So let's get into our credibility, right? Where do we get these numbers from? So before we go further, this isn't just a theory. So we pulled thousands of real optimization work packets over last year. And ultimately with those, we're able to build this snapshot. Glenn, I think a critical piece here is just understanding the notion of us actually excluding break fix from this data. Why did we do that?
Well, I mean, break fix is simple things that happen. It's not focused on value add necessarily. And our focus within Stratus is to return on investment and value add. It's not around the break fix support. I mean, we obviously do that. Anyone should do that as part of a managed service, but it's really focused on driving value through the organization and making the system and the people and more efficient, the data more enriched and more real for customers to make better decisions around their business instead of worrying about, is this going to work when I try to do this import or this integration, or am I going to be stuck having to be on call with support for 4 or 5 hours trying to figure this out? So we try to minimize those types of things. And obviously when we do our assessment, the break fix, the errors that might be occurring are one of the first things we address because they're a critical bottleneck and reduce efficiencies and friction, introduce friction into the application. So we want to address those quickly, but those aren't necessarily value add when they're not really driving business value. Those are just simple things that need to be done from an application standpoint.
Yeah. And also, I know we talked a lot about metrics, but customers don't always immediately point to those when optimization works. It's more of a feel of work is less chaotic. So that reduction in chaos is really the real sign that things are improving. So in other words, just some of the best outcomes we hear is everything just feels smoother now, which is subtle, but it's a powerful proof point that our optimization efforts are paying off.
Yeah, and to summarize, I think when we looked at building this snapshot for all of you today, the notion of break fix is really hiding the root causes. So optimization really equals structural improvement. So if your support partner is only measuring the tickets closed, what are they not measuring? And I think this is really kind of diving deeper, looking at how we analyze specific patterns. So Alex, I'm hoping you can share kind of how we analyze these patterns, not just by failures, but what is the consistency across the board?
Yeah, so no matter the industry, we get very similar requests from our clients, and the same types of optimization needs come up. And especially as companies grow, they all hit the same friction points. Processes that worked fine at a low volume, when you're tuning up that volume and it rises, you start getting strain at a transactional point. And almost everyone eventually experiences the same Excel creep as well. So teams falling back to spreadsheets to patch reporting or process gaps. So being able to plug those gaps with the system instead of relying on those manual processes.
Go ahead, Glenn. Sorry, I had feedback, so we're playing the back and forth on the mute.
Sorry.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's it's a combination of looking at how the business has evolved, what's coming next, and key areas where we can undertake and future-proof the business, but by continuing to support the current work stream and the current business model. And we know in just the past year, all the tariffs, all the changes, just business is more complex than ever I think for a lot of industries, and navigating those challenges is critical, and being able to readily adapt and change is something that we help our customers stay ahead of the curve on, or try to as best we can, right?
No, well said. And I think what we want to now do is get into the aha moments and cover where value is lost. So these are the 5 areas that account. Sorry about that. That account for 85% of the preventable operating expense leakage. And as we go through this, from payment and banking exceptions, workflow and script degradation, the reporting search drift, inventory and fulfillment gaps, integration sync failures. Alex, I'm hoping you can share kind of top line what we've seen here with some of these highlights.
Yeah, so from some of my experience, the areas customers underestimate the most are reporting drift and like the silent integration failures. So reporting drift is basically when you've got your saved reports or searches that slowly become outdated and start running slowly, or just start showing inaccurate data, and nobody notices until critical decisions are being made on bad info. And then on the integration issue side, those can fly under the radar. API connectors might fail quietly, so data stops syncing. Then by the time anybody catches it, you've already got a big mess on your hands, and it often takes some senior folks coming in to clean that up. You've got inventory, orders, invoices that can be mismatched across systems. So it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't break visibly. It just slightly bleeds the margins. Other examples: misallocating stock and either overselling or tying up capital in the wrong place. All those areas leak value before they outright break, which makes it easier to ignore until some of that damage is done, and then it's a firefighting mode.
And Glenn, where would you say, or which bucket, I guess, do you think creates kind of the most downstream damage across the board?
I think a lot of times when information isn't flowing appropriately from area to area, you'll see bottlenecks and you'll see things get hung up, whether that be collections because you're not invoicing as timely as you could. Some of that can be caused by script degradation, workflow. Depending on the business model, we have a lot of customers with integration points. Speeding up those processes to align and be more real time, as opposed to waiting 4 to 5 days for something to be done so you can do your work. I think that's an area of efficiency that a lot of organizations tend to overlook. We can see from a systemic standpoint how long it takes an order to convert to an invoice to convert to payment. I can track that through the system to understand what is your true order to cash cycle. And I think those are some areas that I think a lot of organizations tend to overlook because it's only a day or two late, it's this or that. And when you look at it in one individual instance, that's correct. But when you look at it across hundreds, thousands of customers, well, that becomes more meaningful to an organization.
It compounds.
Yeah.
So I think as we cover value, and where this is being lost, bear in mind none of this breaks overnight. And I think that's the danger. This is a snowball that's running down the hill now that there's finally snow on the West Coast and starting to show up in Colorado. We're seeing that snowball get bigger and bigger and bigger as we get into these engagements with individuals. Next slide, we want to cover kind of the financial operations and the ROI. So this slide really kind of speaks to the CFO. Glenn, do you mind just kind of running through, giving us a quick breakdown on some of the pieces here with the reconciliation, automation, close, and the collections velocity?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot with banking integrations for customers, automated matching rules, helping streamline that. That seems to have been a focus for quite a few of our customers over the past year. Getting those automated rules set up so when your bank feed comes in, it can automatically post those things and create those transactions for you with some review, right? Of course, but at the same time, preventing manual intervention. Help streamline the close cycle, your reconciliation of your books. One of the nice new features that NetSuite has come out with is financial exception management. We're starting to see some customers take advantage of that to identify transactions in real time that may be outliers that may need to be reviewed. Again, a lot of times people they close the books and they spend so much time combing over the data instead of catching that on the front end, then you don't have to look for it. And on the collection side, I think just key workflows that can automate those processes are critical to reducing your day sales outstanding, sending invoices when they're ready, making sure that they're sent or received, you have communication, providing different payment options with the payment link or online payment portals, things like that. Those are all the types of things that we're seeing customers start to adopt to try to cut down on those cycles.
Yeah. And also just common feedback we've received from controllers after optimizing their processes is that their month end or period end just stops being as traumatic as it's been. They go from, scrambling with, like you were saying, Glenn, manual processes or spreadsheets to closing the books with confidence, and also faster. It could be a few days earlier before that they usually do. So finance teams, they often regain the credibility internally once NetSuite is running optimally. Reports, when they're accurate and on time, they're no longer a bottleneck, and finance isn't seen as a bottleneck, but as a kind of reliable internal, partner. So it just shifts from, being questioned of whether the numbers are right to being trusted, and I think that's a boost for the teams internally.
Yeah, I think across the board, as you look at the ROI, bear in mind, these are based off of our customers and what we've seen across the board in 2025. We've got a lot of NetSuite admins joining us today. These are very easy areas to focus on to drive inherent optimization in the NetSuite environments that you work on. In the same vein, we have a lot of C-suite presidents, owners of organizations who come to us and they say, well, NetSuite works, it's fine. What are you going to do for us from an optimization standpoint? And when they see these numbers, it's pretty evident that there's a lot more to be done in your NetSuite environment versus setting it up. You go through the honeymoon phase, everybody is comfortable in the application, but there's so much more that you can take advantage of to really drive impact within the NetSuite application.
And really, people don't know what they don't know as well. So if they don't have that knowledge in-house,
And I back to the litmus test of Excel. So if your team is leveraging Excel to trust NetSuite, who's really running the system? So I like to kind of put the finger in the wind there, and it's which direction are you going? But I do now want to switch into the system stability and the technical debt. This is where optimization quietly pays for itself. Glenn, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more on this side, going through the root cause, the update, resilience, plan development versus emergency development as well. And Alex, if you can talk on the customer side.
Yeah, I think, again, when we first come into some of these environments, system stability, understanding the rules of governance for data. I think data governance, again, we've talked about this at length, Louis, is something that is vastly overlooked in these systems. And we all know it's an age-old adage in ERP, garbage in, garbage out. So that to me is a critical piece. Again, reducing errors that may be occurring, identifying why they're occurring so that we can root cause analysis and fix those. And that's really just to get the system to a stable state to then build on the enhancement side. a lot of that to me comes where the dev strategy of having urgent fixes that you need something done to a planned, identified path of what you're trying to accomplish and what your goals and expected ROI is, instead of just break fix, right? So having a plan of action of we're going to do these types of automations and customizations, and here's the payback piece. And those are much more cleanly identified when you're not just putting out fires, right? You're not just trying to solve so you can close the books. You're proactively looking at the system, identifying areas where you can make those changes. And that way there's a cohesive, plan of action to get you from point A to point B with clearly defined goals.
Yeah, and it's really, customers don't celebrate having fewer IT tickets, but they do celebrate the fact that their work isn't being interrupted by system issues anymore, which is what a lot of the optimization can do. So in practice, it means, you're not pausing for operation issues, waiting on a fix, or having to firefight middle of the night or whatever the situation to be able to close. And while fewer incidents are great, and those will go down as well, it's really the lack of interruptions that makes the business run smoother. And then, stability can be invisible until it's gone. So that's where, metrics don't always come in play.
And I think something that, because we are also enamored with the AI capabilities going into the second half of NetSuite Next, being able to connect to the LLMs, we are huge fans of Causey. Back to system stability, if the data is not in NetSuite and the data is not accurate, you're going to get garbly goop as far as your results. And I think a lot of people forget that. AI is not just going to fix your data mess in the NetSuite system. Alex, Glenn, anything you want to add on that before we get into reporting and decision?
Right. It's not going to fix the accuracy of your data and what you've got in there. It's going to report and talk to it, so it's critical that what's in there is accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I've plugged ours into Claude, and it spits back a number, and it's like, but that's not the right number because it doesn't understand the NetSuite data. And I think understanding the NetSuite data and what transactions post, what transactions don't, how do you recognize revenue? It doesn't go through invoicing. That's for a company that has revenue recognition. I think all those elements, and I've played around with Causey. I've got it for us, and it's phenomenal. But it understands more about the context of the NetSuite ecosystem and the data, and you can still tell it things about your data, and that's important. You have to explain to the AI agent what you're looking for, and you have to be careful about how you do it, because then it'll frame it up in a positive light based on what you ask it. Right. I've played around enough with all of these that if you ask to see the answer you want to see, it will tell you the answer you want to see. So, but again, the underlying structure is the data. The integrity of that is so important to have to be able to utilize those tool sets.
Well said. As we jump into reporting and decision velocity, I think this is a critical piece. Just the notion of speed of insight is speed of decision. Alex, can you talk about some of the elements that you're seeing, and Glenn, you as well, from both reporting and decision?
So the traditional, I think, reporting has kind of been a pull or a push method out to folks' inboxes, especially in the leadership teams. But I've seen more of that trend to where they want to move to a self-serve real-time dashboards that they can control, and that's what we can do when we optimize that reporting. And it also takes away some of the back and forth for the latest numbers from executives whenever they can pull up those dashboards and they know that the numbers can be trusted. Eliminates that whole report ping pong via email that people sometimes have to often play. So it goes back to there not being a version confusion of the data that's out there, or waiting on an analyst to tweak a report. Everybody's looking at the same sort of truth, source of truth, which is critical. So that means that the decisions get made faster, and there's also more confidence in the data.
Yeah, I think, again, data governance policies, making sure it's correct. But there's all these amazing tool sets to understand trends and analysis, and the dashboarding capability of NetSuite plus Power BI, NSAW, whatever your tool set is. The days of having somebody just to run reports, that really shouldn't exist. I get it, certain very large organizations that they're just not going to log in, whatever, but there's other ways of self-serving. And personally, myself, I don't like being sent reports. I like to be able to look at data that I understand and I know. Like, I've built my own dashboard and stuff like that. Granted, I know NetSuite very well, but I know what the underlying data is. I understand it. And to me, that's as important of understanding what those numbers mean on a monthly basis and what they're telling me about the business, about where we're going, about how we performed and what we're doing. And I think that's where we help contextualize that for customers so that they understand what their data means for them at their level and the level above, whether that be the C-suite or whatever it may be.
So I do want to jump into the inventory and fulfillment accuracy, as Glenn brought up, just the roller coaster of tariffs last year. And kudos to Avalara for speaking with some of our audience and helping us and our customers through the journey last year. Supply chain was a seesaw for a lot of folks. Again, this goes back to the data integrity, being in a position to make decisions a lot faster. That data integrity from a supply chain directly, we saw firsthand, correlated to cash flow velocity last year. Glenn, can you talk us through just some of the areas from landed cost to application logic to COGS trust, and Alex, kind of what the fire drills we saw last year and how we helped clean things up?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing started with kind of planning your supply chain, understanding when product was coming in, what date the tariffs was going to hit. Did it affect you? Did it not? I mean, as we talked with Avalara, there were 2 days where it was in play, or 18 hours, and then it wasn't, but they were trying to collect for the 18 hours. I mean, some of this kind of craziness, but then planning into your understanding your cost of goods sold, not what it costs to buy something, but what it costs truly landed into your warehouse and out the front door, so that you know your margin. So having the good data on the front end, and then using those allocations, saying, okay, if we're going to have a 15% tariff uplift, what's that going to do to my cost structure? Where am I going to lose the most money? If I'm going to lose money, where can I have price increases to offset that? We had customers who just wanted a tariff assessment for any order that went out, whatever the percentage was added to as a single line item on invoices going out. And it was just understanding the impact to the business so that you could adapt quickly and not be left holding the bag when it was over. But I do think it all started with planning up front of as best you could, and on again, off again, tariff world we lived in, probably still will for some time, how to plan accordingly. When things might happen, so that you can get inventory in and not have the tariffs, or plan accordingly so that when you are going to be eating 10 to 15%, you can pass that through to customers. And how you do that, whether that was starting to raise prices earlier or just passing it through as a tariff.
Yeah. And when the inventory and fulfillment data, when it's reliable, those frantic end of period fire drills basically disappear. You're not rushing to put out supply chain fires at the last minute because the process is already under control. So there's a lot fewer manual true-up adjustments during the close. And then even after tightening up those processes, like the month-end inventory write-offs can drop to almost zero, just because the numbers in NetSuite were correct the first time around. And then also just operations teams and the finance teams are also aligned. So with both teams trusting that inventory valuation and the fulfillment data, there's a lot less finger pointing and a lot more just cooperation, and everybody can just work a lot better together. And we've had customers that have planned some of those allocations early, just around the tariffs. They'd start, months ahead of time, just knowing that something's going to come down the line. And a lot of those customers that have prioritized that part of it have been a lot more successful in getting that smoothed out with just testing and sandbox and things like that.
Yeah, it really seems like a lot of the inventory errors are really finance problems wearing an operations costume at the end of the day. Talking about integration reliability, as everybody knows, your NetSuite environment is connected to at least one or two, if not 5 to 10 different applications. And again, the reliability of that is critical. I think an issue we have seen time and time again, back to the notion of setting NetSuite up once and not thinking about those integrations moving forward, is things start to crack and break behind the scenes, and those integrations fail somewhat quietly until they don't. And that goes back to the notion of break fix. Oh my God, this application is no longer working with NetSuite. Come and help us save the day. How do we prevent that, Alex? Can you talk a little bit through about some of the experiences?
I mean, really, for integrations, the best thing that a company can do is prevent bad data from entering in the first place. And if you put solid validation checks and cleaning steps up front, those integrations just work quietly in the background. And that dramatically reduces the anxiety around reconciliation, right? I mean, the team's not holding its breath each day trying to figure out if system A matches up with system B. Then they trust that the automated data flow works. So they spend less time on just manual cross-system checks and firefights that are caused by the bad data and the integration issues.
And Glenn, can you talk through kind of what we recommend for integration disciplines?
Yeah, I think understanding the data flows, having a map of how data flows, what validation occurs, so that when errors do occur, also good error reporting on the back end and a place to visually see that, whether we are writing data to custom objects in NetSuite. So when an error does occur, we have a log of it so you can see, go correct the data and resync. I think those are critical elements for reconciliation between various systems. Like if you have a Shopify storefront, you want to reconcile it to your NetSuite environment so that you can see that information to make sure all data did flow over. Because what's worse is not even if it fails on the sync, but if it doesn't ever push for whatever reason from Shopify, and making sure that we have really a good strategy, not only for the integration, but management, because the problems don't occur when the integration works. That's not the hard part. The hard part is identifying the outliers. Again, the 80-20 rule where 20% whatever takes up 80% of your time. The error handling and the problems are going to be what eat it up and what cause you to lose efficiency in that. So the better you can do to map those things out and set the same type of data integrity rules on both sides helps prevent that, so that you're not chasing your tail at month end trying to reconcile systems.
So as we look at specific industry ROI, what we really tried to do here is just look at value realization. Same NetSuite platform, different leverage. Glenn, could you walk us through a couple of industries just very briefly and some of the high level pieces? And Alex, same vein of just not necessarily the dollar number, but the predictability.
Yeah, I think manufacturing in and of itself is just a more complicated business. You're not only procuring raw materials, you're manufacturing, and then you're typically shipping out. So having visibility into your supply chain, understanding when material needs to get there, reduce your inventory carrying cost as best you can, then having visibility into true operational margins and operational efficiencies of how long does it take to make product X? How efficient are we? How much scrap are we using? How much yield are we getting? All of that, I think, are critical elements, and that's really hard to do. And so there's a balance there between the human element of the people doing the work on the floor and the value add. So you have to figure out what the right mix is for your organization. If you ever talk to anybody in a C-suite, they're going to say, I want shop floor control. I want real-time operational reporting. I want to understand everything that's going on at every moment. The reality is that's a lot of times very, very hard to achieve in a lot of different industries or a lot of different manufacturing settings. It's just not attainable to that level of degree because of, I've been in facilities that I was like, you could never have a barcode scanning system in here because you can't even see. There's dust floating around. You have to wear a full suit to go in there. It's just not feasible. So figuring out what the balance is, but understanding what drives the business, understanding what those KPIs are to move the needle are critical. And I think that goes in food and beverage, expiration dates, in SaaS, it's making sure you're billing efficiently, recognizing your revenue accurately so that your books are clean. All of those help streamline the process, reduce time to close, and add value back into the business.
Yeah, and working through all the different industries, what matters most to customers isn't the exact dollar value ROI on the slide necessarily, but it's the predictability of their operations after the optimization. So, consistency is king. When we continuously improve the system month after month, clients get a stable, predictable outcome. And then with that predictability, it's knowing that every quarter their processes will run a bit more efficiently without surprises. And it's often more valuable than any single big cost saving highlighted in a case study. But those still work out in the background as well with the numbers, but there's just a feel to it too.
No, well said. ROI is great, but let's talk about the cost of inaction. Let's make sure people feel this in their bones, if you will. Hoping we can just go through kind of the waterfall here. Alex, can you share some of the areas that we noted, seeing Van Glen, any specific elements from a monthly, even a seasonality standpoint, I think, which probably harder to convey is tariffs kind of screwed our reporting up to a certain extent from a surface level, from a consistent quarter over quarter. But Alex, if you could start and just kind of share a little bit of just the optimization initiatives we really
even on the labor efficiency front, one common theme is that when that optimization is ignored, teams end up working through the weekend sometimes just to close the books because so many manual corrections are needed. And that's one of the real costs of doing nothing is you get your burnt out staff and you get delayed results. Another situation is like security and access. So if personnel leave months ago, they've left months ago and they still have NetSuite access, while you have new hires that are waiting weeks just to get the permissions and work through all those security compliance issues just to get them onboarded properly. So without having somebody that's minding the store, in a sense, that user access drifts into just chaos, and it creates compliance risks and also just those productivity bottlenecks. And then there's what we spoke about before, just those silent sync failures when integrations stop working. By the time someone notices, they're out of whack, and it often takes an expansive effort to be able to untangle that mess. So those are kind of the recurring pains that pile up when you take the hands-off approach and wait to see what happens instead of being proactive about it.
Yeah, I think one of the big things, error prevention, critical is, again, that stable state, reducing those things. I think one of the big things that we bring to organizations is efficiency. A lot of times that is labor efficiency, which is like, well, that they would be doing something else anyway. That's true, but if we're focusing on more value add tasks, driving business value as opposed to error corrections, error handling, or manual data entry, and I think those are a lot of the things that we really help drive in the first 90 days, 120 days of our engagements. And a lot of that's kind of table stakes for this type of organization that we are. But those are the things, and then it gets into the real critical kind of longer range pictures of how do we help optimize margins, how do we help you understand costing, and the idea again, everything we do should drive value to the business. Everything should have a positive ROI to the business. The break fix stuff, that's great, but how do we set it up so that it won't break in the future? How do we set it up such that it's error proof, or there's error handling built into an integration so that you can manipulate the data and push it back where it needs to go? So I think those are kind of the different areas from a build up of that.
Yeah, and even as you were talking about just the labor and folks, either they're going to have to do something anyway. With the AI coming into every company, everybody's going to have a slightly different role in the future. So it's going to be one of those things where everybody is going to have to take on a little bit different areas and wear different hats. So that kind of helps free up some of that and getting ready to future-proof your labor force too.
And I think as we come to the conclusion of today's deck, really the message is simple. Inaction is a decision. You need to be looking at NetSuite as a platform that you can scale and grow with. That was the whole message of NetSuite when it first started. The message with Suite Success is the system is constantly evolving. And if you're not constantly evolving with NetSuite, you're going to be paying for that expensive inaction, because that decision is just a very expensive decision by sitting content and complacent with the NetSuite product, as there's 2 upgrades every single year with a ton of value. Glenn, I want to get into the optimization roadmap next and conclude shortly. It's not just support that we offer. There is a maturity model. Can you just kind of go through our notion of how we work with customers, from fixing issues to controlling issues, to controlling the NetSuite environments and growing with the NetSuite platform?
Yeah. Obviously, it starts with identification. A lot of people come to us with a laundry list of day-to-day problems or things that they're looking to undertake. And for the most part, those are not necessarily the real problem. There's other effects that are other aspects of it that are causing that. So we typically go through, we correct those, and then we start looking at the why behind things and the value stream, if you will, to identify where the breakdowns are occurring to improve that. So you go through the stabilization process, and then it's really identifying opportunities for advancement and automation and efficiency gains. And then we start building upon that. And it really becomes a snowball, going down the hill. So it starts pretty small and barely visible, but by the end, it's a giant avalanche coming down of all of these different things that are now automated, connected, and talking to each other, so that real-time data visibility into the organization is transparent across all departments. But it does start as a very small, little thing here, a little thing there, and then it just builds, and you start to see this connected web of how all the information flows in the organization, and then understanding how to make the most out of those opportunities to enhance and deliver value.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the customers who really win are the ones who treat optimization like it's an ongoing part of operations. It's continuous improvement. It's not a one-off emergency fix, which is often what happens in the firefighting mode. So, in practice, that means they're proactively improving, refining their NetSuite on a continuous basis. It's just part of how they run the business. It's part of their personality of the company, and they don't wait for that crisis to crop up and force their hand to do it. So just by approaching it, and that optimization it's just a steady operational discipline rather than a reactive project, and they set themselves up for a long-term leverage and success.
Well said. As we conclude, I think again, optimization isn't a cost center. It's operating leverage. And I think for the audience today, we have a lot of CFOs, a lot of controllers, a lot of NetSuite admins, even some Salesforce admins in here. We're happy to help you move in the right direction. We're happy to do it ourselves and work with your team. But there's a lot to uncover as far as starting with an assessment, building out your roadmap as we start 2026. This is kind of a last panel question for you guys. Who should be responsible? How important is the responsibility of the NetSuite integrity moving forward? How do we take advantage of everything that's coming? What would you do if you were in a NetSuite admin or a CFO shoes today as you look towards the entirety of 2026?
Alex, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with, it's got to be from the leadership down. It's got to be a continuous improvement across the company, and hopefully that's happening, and hopefully that's the mindset. But like you said, operations isn't the cost center. IT is not necessarily cost center. It can help you reduce and gain a lot of efficiency. So it comes from the top down. It's got to be ingrained in the DNA almost of every company, just wanting to continuously improve across the board. And if the in-house help is just they don't have the hours to do it, or the manpower, the knowledge or skills, a company like ours coming in and being able to assist with that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, I think if you're going to continue to pay the subscription of NetSuite, you should be deriving more value from it. That is the whole purpose of SaaS software. If you're not looking for that, then why not buy an old on-premise system and sit it there and let it run, right? The whole purpose of this is to continue to evolve. You're never left behind. You're always on the latest release, the latest capabilities and technology. It does a disservice to the organization and the solution to not invest in continuing to improve it unless you have plans to move off of it. Like, it's just like anything. It's like a car. You take your car for tune-ups, you get the oil change, you take care of those things unless you want it to just sit and rot. And the people who take care of them, you see a better performance long term. You continue to get efficiencies. You continue to get better, particularly with the ERP side. But I think you have to have that mindset. And it is a very different mindset from older technologies where it was just, crap, we got to upgrade it again. I lived in that world. Alex did, I know. It's a release. They're deprecating our system. We've got to upgrade, and you break out the checkbook for very, very little value. So it's just a different model and a different mindset to new technology and new capabilities.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the end of our webinar today. Hope everybody found this valuable. If you have any questions, we also have the deck available we can share. If you'd like us to speak to your wider team, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is available via LinkedIn. Thank you guys for joining me today, covering what we saw in 2025. 2026 is an exciting year for our team here at Nuage, and I think we'll be going from 10,000 work packets to 20 to 30,000 work packets with more insight for all of you guys as we try to do this on a quarterly basis. Alex, Glenn, anything in closing before we wrap up today?
Nope. As always, just appreciate the conversation. It's always fun.
Yep. No, I was just saying, again, I'll harp on continuous improvement. I believe that's the key for every corporation company out there.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you to our audience. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, everyone.